Today, we're thrilled to host Lacaba, a visionary leader and the co-founder of 2XU Executive Services, who transformed from a teenage remote worker into an award-winning CEO. Join us as we explore Leanne's remarkable journey, her passion for empowering remote workers, and her insights on building a successful, globally impactful business. Leanne, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Wonderful. So for those who haven't encountered your work or your social media channels, perhaps you could give us a short story about how you came to be with us today, a little bit about you.
It's funny. It's the first thing that popped in my head of like when you said little thing. I'm 4'11". I'm not short, but despite the shortness, basically. So I'm from the Philippines. I actually started my whole journey when I was 15 years old. Started pretty young doing freelance writing because online no one really asks you for your age, so I was able to get away with it. Did a bunch of gigs basically, but I've always had kind of the itch the back of my head of like starting my own business because my mom did multiple like mini businesses on her own on her free time basically while still working her full-time work. So I kind of had that itch in the back of my head. So then I was just trying anything else, published my own book even at one point because I figured out how to do the Kindle self-publishing before it was a thing. This way back in 2000. When was that? 2014. Yeah, I thought it was 2014. And basically then landed my first full-time gig when I was 18 years old at this startup publishing company, eventually became CEO of that publishing company when I was 20 years old. And then when I was 23, I had the itch again of like, okay, I want to have my own business. And then when I told my then boss this, I was like, hey, I think it's kind of time for me to like want to venture out. And he said like, hey, instead of like leaving the company, why not partner with me and then we'll start the business together. And then basically how 2XU came about of the one, it came from the want of starting my own business, and two is wanting to create a full circle moment for people to be able to have the choice to be able to work from home. Since that's kind of been my career my whole life, is being able to work anywhere I want. And also then that sparked a YouTube channel that I run basically that's both for people who want to be virtual assistants and hiring virtual assistants, and so much content and speaking on stages and everything else. But it sparked from that one want of getting that full circle moment for everyone else.
What drove you to want to be a business person and an entrepreneur? Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about your entrepreneurial spirit and some of the challenges you faced along the way.
My family, even though they would never probably call themselves like a full-blown entrepreneur. I saw them, so in the Philippines, like instead of like big convenience stores, you'll find things like called sari-sari stores, which is basically, sari-sari means a variety of things. So it'll be chips, it'll be snacks, it'll be rice, it'll be sometimes vegetables. And when I was younger, my grandparents had one because I was kind of there. In the Philippines, almost everyone's retirement plan is to start a sari-sari store because it's just super simple to set up. It brings the community together. And for years, my grandparents had one, and I was usually, as the eldest granddaughter, usually the one tasked to like take care of it, to take care of people. So that kind of was the start of it. And then on the side, like I mentioned, my mom also started like, anytime someone said like, oh, my mom's name was Romana. Oh, Romana, I have, these bags I'm selling, or someone from the US saying like, hey, I'm coming back. I'm selling a few things. Do you know anyone? And my mom would do that on commission. So I kept seeing bits and pieces of entrepreneurship around me. That as young as I think I was in sixth grade, I was like 11 or 12, that I started selling things from our sari-sari store in school. And I got, my mom got really mad about it. But I remember that specific moment of like, I started bringing the snacks. I asked my grandmother, like, hey, can I bring some of these and can I sell them in school? She's like, sure, if bring back so-and-so, if however much you earn, you keep. So I kind of started doing that. I used to be paid to do essays for people as well. So I did many things when I was younger. But it came from just this curiosity also of how does that work? How do you actually build something from scratch? And honestly, 2XU was also started with my curiosity of how other businesses work. And it's worked out perfectly for me because anytime like, oh, this is like such a niche business. How do you do it? And like, here's an assistant to help you. But then I asked the assistant how they do it or how they help run the client's business. So that's kind of it's just that innate curiosity I still have even years and years later on how things work.
Wonderful. And then I guess the internet came along and connected us all, and suddenly you can apply these same principles, but in an online format. So, as an entrepreneur, what have been some of the challenges you faced as you built up your own businesses?
The biggest one, and I've told people this anytime that they're asking me for advice on starting a business or growing a business, it always comes down to the people that you surround yourself with. So you could be this mad genius, amazing at entrepreneurship, or this amazing salesperson. You could sell anything, but if you don't have the right people around you, everything else starts crumbling. And I had to learn that myself multiple times when I was still doing the startup company, and then of course within 2XU as well, where I had to not just have the right people around me, but learn how to create that connection and growth with them. Because I could have the most star employee within the company, but if I didn't set it up where they could succeed, then I'm failing them. So it's both ways of making sure that you get the right people. Because when I was doing the startup company, I would just hire anyone who would apply. I didn't really filter them out, and that bit me later on. And then on the flip side, for 2XU, I was hiring really good people, but I didn't have the right system to support them. So that was kind of the lesson that I've learned twofold in the business the last now 28. So the last 8 years of kind of running companies. It is all about like how you get the right people and how you take care of the right people once you have them.
How would you take care of your people? What are some examples of really looking after your team from your perspective?
So my business coach has said it perfectly, and I've kind of tried to fulfill it every single way, is people always need two things: connection and growth. So connection could be being able to on Fridays, we have this big company meeting where everyone else gets to know not just the business wins of like what they did for the week. It could also be personal wins. Like some of them will say like, oh, I ran, 10K this week, or I did X, Y, and Z. It builds that connection that I'm not just another person in this company. I'm a human being, that I have a life outside of this. So we build mini connections like that throughout the week. And then once we're meeting up with everyone else, then it's a little bit easier. Everyone laughs. We have, even though everyone works from home, we have once a quarter meetups as well. So then everyone kind of gets to know each other, even though they're working one-on-one with clients. And then the growth part is kind of the biggest one. Growth doesn't just mean promotions, doesn't just mean moving up in the company. Growth could also just be, hey, what's the skill that you want to learn? Or like, hey, I know you're working towards this goal. What if we added this part of your responsibility so you actually get better and better of that? So it's looking at what are the things that could pull them forward to where they want to be anyway, because then naturally they will go that way anyway, versus fighting against it and saying like, no, I want you to specialize on this skill, not on that skill. But they're obviously kind of excelling in that one other skill that they love doing. So it's that balance of listening and taking action as well on moving them forward where they want to be.
Good tips. And so your team is a remote working team. How do they deal with the complexities? And you're an expert in this area. As more and more companies, more and more people have shifted to remote or flexible ways of working, what are some keys to successfully working remotely?
The biggest one is communication system. So not just communication, but having a system in place where people can rely on certain things so they know they can talk to things. So for example, for our executive assistants, they have their pod managers who we always joke that are basically the therapists at the same time. But then they have, when they're starting out, they're meeting up 3 times a week, one-on-one. And then after they got onboarded, they're fully with their client after 90 days, then it gets switched to 2 times a week. That way for us, we're able to, if someone kind of semi-ghosts us, or like we notice that their hours are a little bit lower, at least we know the reason. We don't have to chase after them because we've already slotted out the systems on how to check in with them. And at the same time, we have monthly coaching calls, which then we're checking on their whole well-being of like, how do you think this month went? And how could it have done a little bit better? Like, how could we support you better also in the next couple of months? So we've put in ways where it doesn't have to feel as lonely. It doesn't have to feel as I'm just doing this by myself kind of feeling when you're more of a freelancer, not working with a company, because we've put in that connection part really well within our systems.
Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about 2XU and what your team does. And then I'm interested to ask how you support your employees in not getting burnt out, because I imagine that they're always on. They're dealing with complexity. They're dealing with all kinds of people out there in the world. Yeah. So perhaps starting with a little bit about what you actually do and then how we deal with that.
Yeah. So we really specialize in hiring and training remote executive assistants, or virtual assistants is mostly known, for a lot of our clients all over the world now at this point. Not even, I used to just say US and Australia, but now we have clients from the UK, from Dubai, from I think the other day that we had a client from Bermuda now, which is very cool. So a lot of what we focus on is getting them the right person, and then we help them build out the right systems. So we have something called the 2XU BOS, or Business Operating Systems, which is a list of like 74 assets that we help build in a client's business. So then we systematize, we document things with their assistant, and at the same time, we're training their assistant up as they move and grow inside of the client's business as well. So that's kind of the main thing that we do on how we support our EAs on not getting burnt out. The main one is we flag them when they're working more than 40 hours a week. Anytime that we notice that consistently for like more than 2 weeks, if it's only 1 week, if they're focusing on a lunch, or like one of our EAs basically took a leave and wanted to get back to work doing 50 hours a week, we'll let it pass once. But if it's been twice, we use that as a flag to, one, talk to the EA about it, of like, hey, are you overloaded? And if they do, then we use that as a trigger to then talk to the client to adjust a few things. The second one is, one of the other things that we have in the company is to avoid that burnout, is those check-ins, basically, because then burnout usually is because, one, you weren't clear on what you were supposed to be doing, and two, you didn't get enough feedback on how well you're doing as well. So the check-ins help give that clarity on both sides of like, hey, these were the things that the client said I should do, X, Y, and Z. The pod manager basically will tell them like, hey, I think this should be the priority based off of the conversation we had with the client earlier this month, and then giving them that feedback as they need to. So they don't have to just give, for example, like, let's say they created a graphic. They don't have to just show that to the client immediately. They can show a little bit of it to their pod manager. Then they're kind of steered to the right direction. So we have different ways to kind of make sure that they don't feel that overwhelm as much as possible.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. So a lot of it is all about communication, about actually proactively looking at how much time people are investing, and then just connecting with them and saying, is this okay for you? Yeah. I'm interested to know on a very practical level. So your team is distributed across the Philippines?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what are some of the challenges to being based in the Philippines? Are there environmental, social challenges? In my own experience, I've worked with people in the Philippines and they're all super professional, efficient, things get done. One of my close team members is based in Manila. Just amazing in terms of professionalism. But are there challenges beyond that in terms of culture, society, environment?
On infrastructure wise, it used to be a little bit difficult, I guess, because we had one of the slower internets in the world. Now it's kind of gotten better and better, which is nice. We can get Starlink here in the Philippines now, which is good. So it used to be that internet used to be a really big problem. Now most coffee shops will have really good internet already. The second one would be sometimes we'll have power outages. Like we were a few weeks ago, we were looking for a new city to kind of move into, and we found out that they would have blackouts 3 to 5 days sometimes in a month, and we were like, maybe not there. There's still areas that are kind of like that, but again, that's getting better and better. So infrastructure wise, that's one. Culture wise, the main thing to keep in mind when you're working with Filipinos is we'll always prioritize family no matter what. We are willing, and as an employer, like I keep that in mind because I've done that myself. Of like, sadly, when my mom got cancer a few years back, and eventually when she passed, I would not even look at my laptop. Like everything was just on my family. It was focused on that. But then, of course, I let everyone else know what was happening. And it's the same thing for everyone else in the company. Is that we kind of have that unspoken policy of like, if you need to take care of family, we know that's important. You're literally here for your family. We'll be more flexible for you. So that's kind of the other thing to keep in mind is that Filipinos are willing to kind of lose their jobs to take care of their family, rather than the other way around. Usually, where most people would sacrifice family for their jobs. It's kind of the deeply rooted cultural thing for us, is we take care of family more than anything else. Other than that, it's mostly kind of, at least for me, I might have just, of course, the bias being Filipino myself. Working with Filipinos is always amazing because, we're creative. We always find different solutions that we would have never thought of. That professionalism, like you said, is always there. The professionalism, just a funny background, does come from the fact that we were colonized for 300 years by the Spanish, 3 years by the US, 30 years by the US, and 3 years by the Japanese. So it kind of comes from that of like, the straight faced will take care of you. It's kind of like in our blood, and generational trauma, I guess. But then it comes to that of like the professionalism will take care of it. Got it. But also in the flip side, keeping in mind that just because they say that they got it, it might be that they didn't really understand, but they'll figure it out. But it's better to just kind of give them that clarity rather than just letting them figure it out on their own, because it might be, you might be saying one thing and they may understand another. So yeah.
Okay. Tell me about the Stevie Award recognition.
Yeah, so we've got it twice now, which is amazing. So the Stevie Awards, it was one where a friend of mine was the one who keeps like sending me like, hey, you guys should apply for this award. I think you guys are doing similar things. The first one, it was the for great employers, basically in 2021, if I remember right. And that was when I was 2XU was starting to pick up. We were building out our culture. We were building out different things, and we got like the silver for that one. And then the same thing happened last year. Is that we got sent like, hey, they're doing an Asia specific one for Stevie. You guys should apply for the HRN training, because at that point we and we're still working on developing this at the moment. Even we just created our whole training module, basically, of how to get someone who had no experience being a virtual assistant to then within 90 days they've already become that high level executive assistant. So we've had different projects throughout the years that it was just because of amazing friends that I talk to, and I tell them about our projects. They're able to refer and nominate us basically for the awards, and then we go ahead and tell them what we've done, and been lucky to win twice.
Congratulations! What a nice recognition for the work that you do. When you look wider than day-to-day business, what would you say is your purpose? What keeps you moving forward? Like, what is the legacy you would like to leave in the world?
It's for parents to have a choice to work from home. And I say that because for most of my life, my dad worked overseas, because in the Philippines for a little bit, we couldn't earn what we call dollar amount unless we were working, of course, overseas. Like, we didn't have online work before. So I would only see my dad once or twice a year for a month at a time. So it was, and I grew up kind of like a daddy's girl, of course, typical eldest daughter. And I remember that always, that sadness of not seeing my dad all the time, because he had to, he wanted to earn really well so that we could have a really good life. So that it comes from that of, if I'm able to have most parents be able to have the choice at least to work from home or work from an office, then I win. Then that's kind of me fulfilling that goal for me, whether it's me teaching entrepreneurs how to hire remotely, so then they're hiring people working from home, or teaching people to get started on how to work from home. That's kind of my thing that wakes me up every single day. It's like every time I get a comment on YouTube or on Instagram today, I got that same comment of like, oh, this gave me so much clarity on like what to do or what to delegate to my assistant. I'm like, that, even though that's not a client of ours, that's still perfect for me, because that means that's more people getting employed working from home, and again, having that choice to be with their family every single day. So yeah.
That's a great purpose, because as a parent who works from home, it is it's really important to be able to have that flexibility and to be able to be there in the afternoons when school finishes. And it's always been natural to me. I mean, I'm probably a bit like you in that I started working remotely a long time ago because it was a choice. And in between, with stints going into offices and so forth. And I just find it, if you have the discipline to stay focused and you can put in place the rhythms required to, be productive, It's an amazing thing as long as you do have that regular connection with people out there. And for parents, it can be so transformative. In the past, without internet, if you were a mother at home or a father at home, what else could you do? You could do a bit of gardening or, that's it. Whereas now you can be a fully engaged, productive person. I'm interested in, you mentioned your social media channels. Tell us a bit about your content creation journey.
That one's funny. And so I'm an introvert. Like, that's the first thing I tell people. And of course, when I'm talking like this, when I'm on a podcast on the stage, no one believes me. But I did start as someone who identified when I was younger. I write faster than I speak. It used to be my identity was like I was a writer. That's kind of what I did. And I remember when I was starting out to XU, it started out as a course basically on how to hire virtual assistants. That's kind of where we were starting the agency off. And then I have a blooper reel somewhere of my co-founder pushing me in front of the camera because I refuse to be on the camera. I'm like, can't I just do a voiceover for the chorus? Can I just do like this and that? I have it somewhere in my files where he pushed me. And then that's kind of how I started becoming comfortable on camera. And eventually it became to being comfortable on stage. I did Toastmasters for 6 months, would not eat anything before or after every speech that I did because I was so nervous, and I would get, the sweaty palms. I would get the palpitations every single time. So I really worked on training myself on how to be comfortable on stage and creating content. And during the pandemic, that was literally the only other thing I could do, was to create content to basically generate leads for 2XU, and also to generate virtual assistants to apply for 2XU. So during the pandemic, also right before, I did the challenge for myself of like, I did one video a day for 100 days, and I did. I would do questions. People usually ask me about how to start online, how to hire online. Did that, then switched to YouTube. Now I'm close to 20,000 subscribers, which is really cool. Do TikTok from time to time, those pointy, dancey things. I enjoy doing that. Some people cringe, but I actually have fun doing those. Instagram Reels, everything else. But it still goes back to that core purpose of mine of like, I want to educate. If I can educate a mom how to find work online, then that mom teaches the daughter, the cousin, the aunt. If I am able to teach a mom how to start hiring online, it's the same thing. It's the same kind of process. So that's kind of where a lot of my content is circled around, both on stage and on video. Is just being able to teach people on how to get started.
What are some of the tools that have been most effective for you in your own journey, and perhaps for others in your team, in terms of positivity or I'll let you, I won't prompt you. What are some tools that you find most useful for people as they embark on their professional journey of growth and personal development journey?
I would say the first tool that popped into my mind that I use as a software is Notion. And then I use Notion. My whole life is basically on Notion. It's like my finance tracker, my journal, my book tracker is on there. And I always put in the importance of tracking the things that you do, because you never know that later on it might be actually useful. Like, I still have the very first draft of a blog post that I wrote for someone else, just because I use that as a reference point. I go back to that. So it's really important that I found it's really important when you're working from home that you have documentations for the things that you've done and things you've succeeded in, and maybe even the things that you've failed at, because you never know when it becomes useful later on as an example for someone else, or as a reference for you. The next tool that it's not really much of a tool, but like I always put a lot of importance when it comes to habits of like having a routine for yourself, because as you know, probably someone who works from home, it's so hard sometimes to be on work mode when your desk is right beside your bed. And a lot of people start that way, is that their desk is beside my bed. I started that way. So having a routine where you wake up, you do certain things to kind of get yourself into the mode of, now I'm going into work, helps. Like for me, one of the weird ones that changed a little bit of my mindset is I just put on makeup. Just like a little bit of lipstick or a little bit of eyeliner, that kind of like, oh, okay, I'm not anymore Leanne at home mode, I'm Leanne at work mode. So having these subtle shifts that take care of you at the start of the day, and of course at the end of the day, of like, 10 o'clock, I'm not looking at anything else unless I have a meeting or something. I'm not looking at my computer, my phone. I'm just kind of buckled down and reading whatever I'm supposed to be reading. So it's things to take care of before and after that work mode. And I think a good third way to kind of take care of yourself is basically I have a vision board of things that I'm working towards, so that it reminds me in the grind, in the day to day, of I'm not stuck here. There's something I'm moving towards. It feels like I'm stuck here just because I have not been here in this position before, but it's because I'm moving towards this thing that I have. So for me, my vision board is on my iPad, it's on my laptop, it's on my phone, it's everywhere else that I could see. So then I'm in that mode of constantly supporting myself and kind of being my own coach as I go through life.
How do you achieve work-life balance personally? I work with many CEOs, senior leaders, and they find it really difficult to create some balance. Some say there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's work-life integration, or it's just work is life, or some people have, as you said, those clearly defined boundaries. Do you do anything else? I mean, do you prioritize physical well-being, for example, sleep? Do you have some non-negotiables that help you to stay focused?
I have a couple, but whenever someone asks me that question, I always answer like, it depends on which stage you're in life. Like I remember in my early 20s, I would work 60-hour work weeks, mostly because I can. I had that strength and that I miss that actually, that strength to be able to work 60-hour work weeks. But then you get to the point where you do have to get out of it. Like when I was starting 2XU, I was okay with that because I was starting a business. Now that 2XU is now a little bit of, in my head, a little bit of a toddler. It's 4 years old now. It's starting to do things on its own. It's more independent of me. Then I'm building out this lifestyle where I'm starting a new business, but at the same time, I'm doing it a little bit smarter. So it depends on that focus and time of your life, because of course there's entrepreneurs who say, grind until like, you already get your success. But then we have on the flip side of like, 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss, do just XYZ in your life. But again, it depends on that focus, because then for me, I predict that I'm probably going to go back to the 60-hour work weeks because I'm going to start a new business. And I'm comfortable with that. I'm setting that own expectation in my head that that's going to be my life for a little bit. So it's kind of that on balancing work and life. It's basically just all about the negotiations that you have with yourself, depending on where you're at as well, because it'll always look different from one person to the other because they have a different focus in life as well.
How important is it to have really big goals? Because you mentioned your goal is to help, and I got this off the internet, 10,000 entrepreneurs grow remotely and 1 million Filipinos to work from home. I mean, that is a goal that I can even sense myself. It creates a spark. It's big. How important is it to create large goals? And then how do you implement the strategies to achieve it?
I always say that it's whenever you're starting to do anything, start with the end in mind. This is coming from 7 Habits of Highly Effective, high performing people. I'm forgetting the title now. We're starting with your big, hairy, audacious goal. Like I call it the BHAG, because then you have something that you have your North Star of like, you might take different paths, but you know where you're going. And for me, on the implementation side of that, I take it year by year. So I read the 12-week year. I've read so many other like goal setting books, but I always start with the year with a chapter in mind of like, if 2024 was a chapter in my book of life and I know how it ends, what would 2024 be? So 2024 this year is, I'm calling it the Empress chapter of me kind of becoming more and more of confident with myself, of speaking, of doing more of these kinds of things. I'm starting my own podcast next month. So there's a lot of different mini things that I'm doing to set up that confident Leanne. So then when I start the new business, I'm able to start it from a different point of view rather than when I was 23 when I started 2XU. Last year, it was the Empire, because I was thinking, okay, what would be the next business that I did? I ended basically the year with that next business that I wanted to start. So I always put in different things every single year that as a theme. So anytime that I'm going to decide on something, I would ask myself, does this move me toward my chapter, or am I actually going back a few chapters and not actually being in alignment with where I want to be? So that's kind of the back and forth I always have, is the big heritage goal, and then I have the theme for the year or chapter name for the year, kind of ground me every single time that I have to make a decision moving forward, or is it taking me backward?
That's such a nice wide perspective as well, to go, there's a goal. I don't have to achieve it all at once. I can break it down. And as a writer myself, it resonates so much. I've never heard that before, actually, just considering your life as, of course, as a journey, but as a book, with every year being a chapter. I'm going to implement that myself. Now, that have you written or recorded that on YouTube yet, or on any of your channel?
I do every single time that I do every single year, I do like a goal setting video where I'm talking about it, but I don't think anyone else has fully kind of caught on the chapter thing, but I talk about it every single time.
Yeah, no, it's a great methodology. That there's a book there for sure to help people design the book of their life. What a nice way to look at it. Can you share a little bit more about your upcoming projects? What's next for you as a creator? I'm sure you must always be finding other opportunities and coming up with lots and lots of ideas. In fact, sometimes the hardest thing for entrepreneurs is what to say no to. But I'm interested in what's coming, what's exciting in the future for you in the next chapters.
So this year, like I said, since I've kind of put on this very lofty goal of building myself up. So, what I already mentioned was I do have the podcast that I'm starting by hopefully, I already said this last time, by next month. That one would be something that would be really cool, because I've done guestings on a lot of podcasts. I haven't done enough of having someone as a guest. So I'm looking forward to that. The other one is last 3 chapters of the book I'm writing on how to scale you. That's actually the title of the book, on like how to actually break down who you are, so then you know what to delegate and what to duplicate to a virtual assistant or to your team, basically. And then also this year, so with the book, the podcast, I just have a lot of things coming out. And also I think the other thing that I'm focusing on this year is just doing more international speaking stages. Basically, last year I did one, which was great, and I want to do another one. I spoke in Thailand last year, and this year, hopefully, I'm trying to get to Europe at this point, because I have not been to Europe yet. So, yeah, those are the different things that I have for the next year.
Exciting. How can people streamline or optimize their relationship with their virtual assistant? Or it could be a team member, but as an expert in this particular area, and it's all about relationships and clarity, what are some tips for really getting the most out of a relationship, a collaboration with your assistant or a team member?
So I created something that's called the 2XU formula. So when you're trying to either work with an assistant or work with a remote team or hiring for the first time, you want to look at 3 things in your business or within yourself as well. So the first one is, are you working on the right things? So I try to apply a little bit of Pareto principle of, out of the 10 things you're doing in a day, what are the 2 things that you know you should focus on, and then delegating and automating the rest. So for me, my 20% is doing guestings like this, it's doing content, it's hopping on sales calls, because that fuels me, basically, that curiosity. That's my 20%. The rest, my assistant takes care of, someone else in the team takes care of it. So a lot of people tend to delegate the things that they hate, which is the wrong thing, because then you're delegating, if you hate sales and you're delegating that to someone else, then of course they're going to fail. So that's why I say, what's the 20% in your business that you know that you bring a lot of value in, that brings a lot of value into the business? Focus on that and start delegating and automating the rest. The second part of that formula is building the right system. So now that you know what are the tasks in the business, do you have it documented? Do you have assets to make it easy for someone else to be trained up and to do it? Creating standard operating procedures always sounds boring and like clunky. And for me, I thought it weird, but then now I'm super addicted to systems. But it is one of the ways that you can free yourself up, because everything's not in your head anymore. It's someone else's head as well. You can easily train someone up in doing it. And the last thing is the one that I mentioned before, is then hiring the right person and then keeping the right person as well. So it's putting in that, we call it your second brain effect, putting in the effort to find the person who could be a second brain for you, and then nurturing that person and keeping that person train, that connection and growth basically throughout while you guys are working. And usually whenever those three combine and make sense for people, then it's them working with our EAs for like the last 3 or 4 years already, just because they were able to actually implement it too. So yeah.
Any advice for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Focus on that first dollar. Like so many people, I've seen a lot of people who could have been potential clients, like for example, for 2XU, where they had a lot of success here. They were professionals and they want to do it on their own. They go through all of the, oh, we'll set up the branding kit. Oh, we'll set up the website. We'll set up X, Y, and Z. But the first question for me is like, have you sold it? Has someone actually said that they want your business? Because like for me, for 2XU, I didn't start any of that. I only had the course because I didn't want to start everything else if I didn't have that first client. It was when we had our first client that then I got like the website up. I got the Facebook, Instagram, everything else up for 2XU, because it's always important to have that first proof that someone's actually willing to pay you for what it is that you do, rather than in your head, I'm like, oh no, this is something I struggle with, so I'm willing to pay someone else for it. And like, that's you. As someone else said that they wanted to pay you and actually giving you the money to do it. So nothing else matters until you have that proof that someone wants to pay for it. So if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, start from there versus like having to set up your LLC, have hire a lawyer, a bookkeeper when you have nothing coming in. You probably agree with this, Brad. You've probably seen it time and time again of people setting up everything perfectly, but they actually have never sold anything yet. And that's where usually people fail.
Mm-hmm. I've done that myself because, you know, when you've got the skills to create your own brand, you sometimes focus on that, and then the fear of making the first call sets in, and you're waiting there. When is that lead going to come in? It's ridiculous. It's exactly as you say. Prove the concept first, and then everything else will fall into place. Great advice. Any final thoughts, any wisdom you'd like to share? It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. I've learned a lot, and this will make for, I'm sure, a really enlightening session for many people. Anything else that you'd like to share?
This has been fun as well. I've liked your questions and our back and forth as well. So I guess for the last thing is be someone who's just constantly growing. That's kind of the thing that I have for myself, is like, I'm always reading 5-6 books basically at the same time sometimes. Or I'm going courses, or going through mentors, and I have business coaches. And it all comes back from keeping in mind that you can never really pour or expect things from people that you can't expect from yourself. You can't expect a great employee if you're not a great leader. You can't expect a great client if you're not a great service provider. So it's keeping in mind that it's kind of that back and forth, and it always comes from someone who is constantly growing, and that curiosity basically to learn more, to find out more, to ask better and better questions, just like you have, Brad, because then that's how you learn and that's how you grow. Whether you are trying to create your career or create your business, it's the same thing. It's the same path. Be someone who's just constantly growing.
I love that. What a great way to finish off. Leanne, how can people connect with you? We'll, of course, include links in the show notes, but any direct references you'd like to mention?
LinkedIn is the best, just because I'm most active there. Other than that, if someone wants to kind of move forward and try to figure out if having a virtual assistant is the right thing for them, we have a scorecard. So it's 2xyou.com/scorecard. Takes 2 minutes to figure out like where you're at in your business. And then usually at the very end, then we can hop on a call and talk more. So yeah. I'm
excited about your forthcoming book, Scale You. That's the name. Awesome. Can't wait to follow you and your journey across all of your social channels. Everyone, click the links in the show notes if you'd like to connect with Leanne, and thank you again for connecting today.